Hi ladies and gents, welcome to our flat to round draw along. So here are the materials you're going to need. You should have gotten from me one of these long skinny strips of drawing paper. You're going to need an ebony pencil, eraser of your choice, either both the white vinyl eraser and a kneaded eraser, or one or the other. I do recommend a chamois cloth or a piece of tissue, particularly for doing our background areas, and then of course a blender tool. I'm going to be using the Q-tip today because that's my own personal favorite, but of course you could be using a tortillon as well. That's up to you. Okay, so first things first, take your paper, write your name on it. And whatever your class period is, I always write sample. Okay, then go ahead and flip it on over. What you're going to do is take this paper, okay, see end to end, and I want you to fold it in half. Give it a good crease. Okay, and then take either end and fold it to the middle crease line. What that's going to do is give you 4 even sections to do your drawing in. Okay, there we go. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so for today's draw along, it's titled From Flat to Round. So we're going to be using how to take light theory, how light falls on objects in a drawing, and how to make those flat shapes that we draw look like rounded three-dimensional form. Okay? The first one we're going to start with is a basic circle. So I want you to take your pencil and light ballerina pressure. You're barely putting any pencil pressure on at all. I want you to sketch a flat circle. Beautiful. Okay, now behind that circle, sketch yourself a little table line. So we're working in our top square. Okay. Now the next thing I want you to do is label where we imagine our light source is following from. Before we can do any shading, we need to know which direction the light is falling. That way we know what the light side of our sphere is, what the dark side is, and where our cast shadow is going to be. So I'm going to put in upper left corner, a little LS, a little sunshine rays. That's my light source. I can now see, okay, that my light source starting in this upper right hand corner is shining down on my sphere. This will be the lightest side because it's closest to my light source. This will be the darker side because it's further away. Okay, now if this is the further away side, I'm going to have a cast shadow because the object is blocking some of that light. And it's not going to be a perfect sphere, it's going to be more of an ellipse. And it's okay if your ellipse goes off the page a little bit. Okay, and so here's my cast shadow for my sphere, okay? Because it is direct opposite the light source, this object is blocking the light, therefore it's not hitting the table, and that's what creates the shadow. All right, let's take our pencil. Time to start some shading. So I'm going to start with kind of medium pressure. And the edge furthest away from my cast shadow is going to have that more medium pressure. I'm going to save my heaviest pressure for the cast shadow, so go with medium. Now as I work towards my light source, my pressure is going to lighten up. And it's going to get lighter and lighter as it moves towards my light source because more light is hitting that object. And that's part of how we create this illusion that this is not a flat circle, but a round sphere. Now notice I'm also using a curved shading stroke. I'm shading with the form. That just means if it's a round object, I'm not using a round shading stroke. I'm not using a flat shading stroke. I'm using a round shading stroke so that I create the illusion of that curve. Same thing with my blending tool. I'm going to work in little circles, little curves, and now I'm going to smudge using a curved smudging stroke. I'm going to start blending that wonderful soft ebony pencil and creating the illusion that this is a really gorgeous round sphere. Now I tend to overblend. I tend to smudge till I don't see almost anything of my light side anymore. Okay, so I like to take my kneaded eraser. Remember, your eraser is important a drawing tool as is your pencil. And I'm going to use a curved erasing stroke to make sure I still keep that beautiful light side of my sphere. I'm going to use my chamois too. Give it a good blend. And already we've created a really nice illusion of three-dimensional shape. Now I'm going to do my cast shadow. Cast shadow is going to be heaviest and darkest directly underneath the sphere. Now the cast shadow is falling on a flat tabletop, so there's no need to do any curved shading stroke. All we have to do is just this beautiful flat shaded line. And as I move away from the object, I'm going to let that shadow start to fade to more of a middle value. Heaviest, glossiest, beautiful pencil pressure directly up underneath the sphere. Then as it moves away, let it fade out. Now do not, ladies and gentlemen, do not go back and outline your cast shadow or your sphere. Why? Outlines flatten. They take all that beautiful shading work you've just done and flattens it right out. It wrecks the illusion that this is a three-dimensional object. Now we're almost there. This looks pretty 3D right now, okay? But we can take it one step further. We're going to add a tabletop value as well as a wall value. And I'm noticing my tabletop's a little uneven here. I'm gonna resketch that. Okay, I'm gonna work with a very, very light pressure on my pencil and put in a little value on this tabletop background. Notice how I'm holding my pencil to the side so I get good contact, good even contact of the graphite with the paper. I'm holding the pencil at the very end like so that I'm putting barely any pressure on it. And then I'm going to use my chamois cloth to do my blending. Now you're going to bring that blending right up to the edge of the cast shadow, right up to the edge of the sphere. And again, no outlining. If you lose a bit of the edge of the sphere or of the cast shadow, you need to go back and adjust the value. You should not just outline it, right? So see how I've lost the edge a little bit there? I'm going back and I'm just adding a little bit more shading, do a little bit more blending, right? I didn't outline anything. I'm adjusting the value on my shaded objects. In the sky or the wall, however you like to think about it, okay, we're also going to add a very light value. So I'm going to erase where I put LS, light source, right now. And now I'm going to put no pressure on the pencil. I'm going to create the absolute lightest value I possibly can with this ebony pencil. So I'm putting no pressure on the pencil whatsoever, none. I'm just giving it a teeny tiny little bit of graphite that I can then smudge. Okay, now I'm gonna grab my chamois cloth again. Whoops, paper sliding. And I'm gonna give my background a nice smudge. Okay, I'm gonna erase the edge. If I see any of my blending has gone inside my circle at all, I can see my light side of my circle gets a little too close in value to the background. So I'm going to go in and add just a little touch of value on the sphere. Or not on the sphere, I'm sorry, on the background around the sphere. And then I'm going to go back in and erase and make sure that light edge of my sphere still shows up beautifully. There we go. That looks better. Now my last little detail I can add is a phenomenon called reflected light or a reverse highlight. And what that means is on a curved object, when light is shining down on it, because that light bends around the object, or that I should say the object bends away from the light, sometimes what we see happening on the shadow side is a little teeny edge of light that's just peeking around the side, on the dark side of the object. So go ahead and with your eraser, either your chunk, the white vinyl, or your knead eraser, go ahead and give yourself just a little reflected highlight. And check that out. There's a super round sphere. Okay, let's move on to our cylinder next. Okay, ladies and gents, time for our cylinder. Move down to your next square. To make the cylinder, we're going to start with an ellipse. So think a circle, but squished. So again, light pencil pressure, because we don't want to have any outlines. Remember, outlines flatten. We're going to use our beautiful shading to hide our contour outline. Let's just start with the ellipse. To that ellipse, we're going to add 2 straight sides to our cylinder. And then the bottom, pardon me, instead of a straight edge, we're going to match the front curve of this ellipse where it would be sitting on the tabletop as best we can. Once again, we're going to add our tabletop line on either side, and we're going to put in that we have our light source shining down from the top. Now, I would imagine on our cylinder that the top is obviously getting the most light. Okay, so that's going to be our lightest. This bottom corner here, this bottom right corner, probably going to be darker. Okay, and that means this is going to be the side for our cast shadow. So, folks, go ahead and draw in your cast shadow. I'm going to have mine kind of going off at the similar angle to the circle off the table. It'll look mostly like a rectangle because we don't see the rounded top if it's going off the table. Okay. You might see a little curve just at the very front edge, very front, because it is curved sitting down on the bottom table here. Mostly you're going to see the sides. Okay, and now it's time for us to start our shading. Again, middle pressure, we're going to start and work our way from the darker side to the lighter side. Now a cylinder is still a curved object, right? So I'm going to rotate my paper here so that my hand's in a comfortable shading position. And notice how I'm still curving my shade stroke, working my way around the cylinder. Always rotate your paper so that you're in a comfortable shading position. Never try to shade in a position that your hand is uncomfortable in. It'll get really tired, you don't have as much control. Okay. All right, and now I'm going to take my Q-tip, do my blending. And I'm going to keep it rotated this way. It's more comfy. Let me make sure I'm still on camera. Oh, I am. We're still good. There we go. Use that curved. There we go. Blending stroke to go all the way around the cylinder. You should still be using that curved blending stroke in addition to the curved shading stroke. I'm going to add just a little bit more value in that middle to the dark side of my cylinder. Okay, now the top is going to be the lightest, but I imagine that'd be most light concentrated here. Because this is flat, I'm going to add just a teeny tiny little bit of light value to the far edge of the top of the cylinder, and then give it a little smudge just at the top edge. Anywhere you over smudge, take your eraser and just clean up your edges. I feel like I always end up over smudging a little bit. Remember, no outlining. I'm just going to adjust my value a little bit on the shade side of my, or the more middle value side of my cylinder, just to make sure that edge of the ellipse at the top looks really crisp. Okay, let's do our cast shadow. Again, darkest underneath the cylinder, heaviest pencil pressure here. And no need to worry about curved shading stroke, right? It is a tabletop, it's nice and flat. Beautiful. And then again, as I move away from the cylinder, lighten up that pressure. And a little smudge. Right, so heaviest, concentrated, richest black values towards the cylinder, underneath the object where most of the light's being blocked, and then I'll let it fade away as it moves away from the object. Okay, let's put our grounds in. Barely any pressure. Let's put some middle tabletop value down here. Really fill your whole tabletop too. Shade all the way to the edges. Right, bring your shading right up to the edge of the cast shadow. Right up to the edge of the object. Again, I like to use the chamois cloth for my blending in the background. You may choose to use something different. If you're at home, you could always use a piece of paper towel or a Kleenex, like a tissue. Works great. Okay, and I can see already, right, my values are getting a little too close at the edge of my cylinder. So I'm actually going to take my eraser. I'm going to lighten up the edge of my cylinder, just ever so slightly there. Give it a little reblend so that my cylinder separates from my tabletop. Right, no outlining. Do not take your pencil and outline your objects. You want to keep all this value as the way that your object ends up looking 3D, right? Outline is only going to flatten it. Okay, now let's erase our light source, and we'll add in that barely any value in the very background. Okay, ballerina pressure on the pencil. Light, 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 light. Delicate, delicate, delicate light. Bring it right up to the edge of your object. Barely any pressure. I'm just kind of letting the weight of the ebony pencil drag across the surface. Okay, and then same thing. Grab your blending tool of choice. Right, you could always blend your background too with the Q-tip, right, or with your tortillon. But I think for backgrounds, I kind of like the chamois or a tissue because it just lets you get just a smoother, flat value quicker. Okay, anywhere you've blended into that lightest corner of your cylinder, go ahead and touch that up. I'm doing that right now. My values get a little close on this edge, so I'm going to go back and just again adjust the value. Right, I'm not outlining, I'm adding a little bit more pencil just to that outside edge. Do a little bit of a reblend there. There we go, that makes that corner look a little bit brighter. And then finally, as the last little touch, this is a curved object, which means we could potentially see that reflected light or that reverse highlight. So on my very back edge here on the shadow side, I'm going to put in, using my eraser, a little fancy reverse highlight. Beautiful. Just going along the back edge. Excellent, so that's our cylinder, ladies and gents. Two shapes, our circle and our cylinder, taken from flat to round. Let's go down to our third here next. We'll do a cone. Okay, ladies and gents, time for our third flat to round shape, the cone. So we're going to start with very light pressure, right? No hard outlines, a triangle top. Okay, and to that triangle top, we're going to add a curved bottom. Okay. Now behind that cone, Add yourself the tabletop. And in addition, remember your light source in the upper left-hand corner. Until we know which direction the light's coming from, we can't use any of our light theory to do our shading. So again, if our light source is coming from the upper left, shining down on our cone, this will be the most concentrated light area. Direct opposite will be the darkest. This is also the side and direction that my cast shadow is most likely to go to. So let's do this as well. Let's have our little cone cast shadow, maybe going this direction off the table, and let's start our shading. So I'm going to start from the dark side, medium pressure, just like we've been doing all along. Our cone is still a curved object, so I'm going to rotate my paper so it's a bit more comfortable for shading. If you're noticing you're getting a lot of smudging, folks, shade guard. Grab yourself a little piece of tissue or paper towel or a sheet of scrap paper, computer paper, and rest your shading hand on it as you shade if you're getting a lot of smudging. Okay, now as I move towards the light source, I'm going to lighten up on that pencil pressure. Notice I'm still using that curved shading stroke. Okay, got some pencil down there, very good. I'm going to grab my Q-tip. And same thing, I'm using that curved blending stroke now. Create nice, soft curved value and create the illusion of the form. Again, sometimes you'll hear this referred to if you watch other YouTube drawing videos or whatnot. You'll hear it in class sometimes referred to as shading with the form, right? All right, I've over blended just a touch on my light side. So I'm going to go back with my eraser and my Q-tip and just get back that light edge a little bit. There we go. Even my eraser stroke is curved. Sometimes I like to work in like little circles or whatnot. You know, that's kind of the beauty of this. The more you work at it, the more you practice it, the more you develop your own technique that works really well for you. Okay, now time for that cast shadow. Once again, heaviest, deepest, richest values directly underneath the object. As we move away from the object, we're going to lighten up that pressure on our pencil. And we're going to let it fade away to more of a middle. Right? Most of the light is being blocked directly underneath and closest to the shape. So that's where we do our darkest values. As we move away from it, that's where we lighten up and those values get lighter and lighter and lighter and just fade away. Beautiful. Okay, let's get our grounds and our background in. Time for us to put in that tabletop. So go ahead, take your pencil, light pressure, tilt it to the side, nice and even. I'm barely putting any pressure on the pencil at all. Getting right up to the edge of the object, right to the edge of the cast shadow. Okay, I'm going to use my chamois. Again, you could use any blending tool you have. I like the chamois cloth for the background. I'm going to get right up to the edge of that cone there, right up to the edge of the cast shadow, right? No outlining, no halos or gaps. You want the planes of these values meeting to create that illusion of 3D. Okay, if you've accidentally smudged a bit into the light area of your object, go back and touch that up with an eraser. Okay, and now we're going to erase our light source and put in that light, barely there, barely anything on the paper, wall or sky value, however you like to think about it. Again, you're bringing it right up to the edge of the cone. We want to hide all lines. We just want to see beautiful planes of value meeting. And that's what creates the illusion of a line actually for our eye. Okay, so I'm going to take my chamois cloth. Once again, let's do a good shade. Good smudge. Right, we don't have to worry about curved smudging in the backgrounds because it's just flat. Okay, anywhere that your values get too close, go back and adjust. Remember, no outlining, adjust the value. So my tabletop edge gets a little too close to my wall or sky color there, so I'm going to adjust the value. Cone looks pretty good. I'm going to try to soften what I see is a little bit outliney business there. Go ahead and give it a little bit more shading on the outside edge of the cone there, on its light side. Right, we're just subtly adjusting those values. No outlining. Outlining is just going to make things look flat. Oh, there we go. And of course, this is a curved object, so guess what? We could potentially see a reverse highlight, right? Because this light is wrapping or bending around the object. So on the opposite side, go ahead, take your eraser and give yourself a beautiful little reverse highlight on the back edge of your cone. Ta-da! And the cone is complete. Well done, ladies and gents. Last one we're moving on to is our cube. Okay, ladies and gents, last one we're going to do is our cube. Now, cube is a straight-sided object, so we don't have to worry about any curved blending at all. Let's start with just the face of the cube. We're going to start with a square. Now onto this square, we're going to add some parallel lines to create sides, receding in space, and then parallel lines to the front, top and bottom, or sorry, front edge, and side edges to create the top, side, and front of this cube. You'll also add your table line, and of course, your light source. Okay, now we're going to imagine that this light source at this point is shining directly down on the top of our box, which means the opposite side, the tabletop, the bottom is probably the darkest, or if you imagine coming from left to right, this far right side is probably the darkest. So our cast shadow is most likely going off the table in this direction. Now our top is going to be the lightest, so we'll leave that light. And that means we're going to have to choose between two middles. Because this is further away from the light source, I'm going to assume this is the darker middle side. Now, no need to do curved shading stroke. Nice flat shading stroke for the cube. The cube's a little bit easier shading-wise. So let's put in a nice middle value. Fill it right in and give yourself a good smudge. Again, your choice of blending tool. Now, the key here is no outlining. You just want these beautiful planes of value to meet up edge to edge. Now where I've over smudged, I'm going to go back and clean up with my eraser. Keep those edges nice and tight. Now on the front, I imagine it's still a middle value, but it's going to be a little bit lighter. It's not the direct opposite of our light source. So now I'm going to do kind of a light middle. I'm not outlining edge to edge though. I'm just letting those planes of value meet. Do you see how I'm doing that? So that it creates the separation of the side. Okay, and now I'm going to blend. I think the cube goes like really quickly. It's the simplest one, right? We almost start with the hardest and work our way simpler. Now here's where we need to adjust some value. Do you see how my two values got a little bit close on the edge and I've lost the dark side of my box? Now I'm not going to outline, I'm going to adjust the value on the darker side of my box and add a little bit more shading. And that's what creates, the illusion that these two meet at that edge. Beautiful. I'm gonna touch up the top of my shading there a little bit as well, just with my eraser. Okay, cast shadow is opposite the object, so we're gonna go darkest, darkest, darkest value underneath the object. Right now it's old hat. Now you kind of get the formula for it. And then as we move away from our object, that cast shadow is going to start to lighten up and fade away. There we go. I'm going to give my cast shadow a nice little smudge. Do any cleanup where I over smudged a little? Okay, and then finally, next two steps. Let's put in that barely there light value for the tabletop ballerina pressure. So it has a ground that it's sitting on. Right, same steps as all. The only difference with the cube is we don't have to do all that work of creating a curved shading stroke. Okay, I'm going to take my chamois. Good blend. Excellent. Okay, same thing on the opposite side. Good blend, perfect. And then finally, let's erase light source, and you're gonna put no pressure on the pencil now, right? This is my no pressure one. And let's give ourselves a nice wall or sky value. Remember, absolutely no outlining. You are relying on the differences in value to create the illusion of that three-dimensional form. There we go. Excellent. Do a little eraser touch-up anywhere I've blended. Make sure you go into your light side there and touch up any over blending that may have happened. Remember, no outlining. See how I'm adjusting the value in the background? I am not outlining. I'm just darkening that wall area just a little bit. Now this object, our cube, will have no reflected light. Why? Because it's a straight-sided object. All that's going to happen is light is going to hit the surface. All right, ladies and gents, and there it is. Our cube is totally finished. Well done. Thanks for visiting us in the Wonderbar room, and I'll be seeing you next class.